Hey everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel. So in today's video, we are going to talk about immutable classes in Java. An immutable class is a class whose objects cannot be modified once created. So every time we want to change the state of an immutable object, a new object is created. So rather than modifying the existing object, the new copy of that object will be created. So immutability is specifically useful for keeping your code thread safe and preventing accidental changes. So let's jump into the practical example and we will see how we can achieve immutable class in Java. So let's create one class. Let's name it student. And in this class, I have three properties: int, roll number, string name, one hash map of string and integer type. Let's call it marks. And let me import the class package, import java.util.star. So to make the class immutable, the very first thing, the class should be final so that no other class can inherit this class. So this is the first step. The second step is, so all the properties of this class should be private and final. So we are making the properties private so that these properties cannot be accessed outside directly, right? And we are making all the properties final because once the values are assigned to these properties, so we don't want to modify these properties even accidentally. So that's why we just made the properties final. So let's initialize these properties in the constructor. So here we have initialized roll number and name from the arguments passed in constructor, right? But here there is a problem with the marks. So marks is of type HashMap, which is mutable property. So the class which is calling this constructor, so that class has this reference, right? Reference of marks. And we are initializing our marks property with that reference. Means if they will be changing something in marks, so that will be affecting our object property. So here we are currently doing the shallow copy, right? Shallow copy is just we are copying the reference marks into reference marks of this class, right? So it means, so both these references are pointing to the same object, which means, as I mentioned earlier, from the outside, by using this reference, this property can be changed. So which is violation of immutable class. So here what we need to do is we need to perform deep cloning, not the shallow cloning, right? So we will be doing deep cloning. So let's do one thing. Let me create one function, private HashMap, and let's change this name to, we can say, deep copy of marks, right? And it will be accepting the reference of marks. And here we will be creating a new object of HashMap type, and then we will be using that object to initialize our property. So let's write the code. For example, we have HashMap of string and integer type, and now we will be copying the elements from this marks reference. So for map dot entry set, so here what we are doing, we just referring all the entry sets. So all the entry sets from this marks reference, and now we will be assigning all the values into copy map. So here copy dot put, and so this entry, we are taking the key and the values, and we are passing those values into this copy hash map. And finally, this is the fresh copy because we have created the new instance of hash map, and we will be returning this copy, right? And here, so here in this assignment, so we will be changing the code and we will be calling deep copy marks, and we will be passing the reference that we received from outside this class. So now you can see here this marks is ultimately referring this new instance of HashMap, not the same instance which is referred by this marks reference. So first step was to declare the class as final. Second step was to declare all the properties final and private. Third step is, while initializing the properties, we need to make sure for mutable properties, we just need to perform the deep cloning, not the shallow cloning. So shallow cloning was if we assign this marks directly. So means both these references marks and this marks are referring to the same object. But in case we are performing the deep cloning, so this marks and our property marks are referring to separate objects, right? And for the deep cloning, so we have just created this method where we are creating new object and we are passing all the values from this marks into our new object, and we are assigning this new object to our marks property. So I hope you can understand this statement. And third point is, so we need to create only getter methods for this class. So getters for all these properties. So here you can see we have getter methods. So get roll number returns roll number, get name returns name, and get marks returns marks. So we are okay with roll number and name, but there is some problem with get marks. So here we are returning the original reference to the original object, right? For this marks, which is wrong, because if outside class get this reference, that class may attempt to make the changes in the marks, right? Even in get marks, we need to return the new object instead of the original one. So here what we will be doing, so we have method deep copy marks just to clone the marks, and we will be returning this object. So basically this is the new object, not the original one which we have for this class, right? So this is another thing we need to make sure, like in all getter methods, so all our mutable properties, we need to return the separate copy of those, not the original one. So another thing, if our class is clonable, for example, I am implementing clonable interface here. So if our class is clonable, so we need to make sure our clone method should return the copy of mutable objects, right? It shouldn't return the original object. So let's override the clone method. So public student clone. In this method, what we can do, student, we can do cloned student equals to super dot clone, and let me typecast this to student. So we are overriding the method. We need to make sure like our class should be clonable. So in case if a class is not clonable, right? So it will throw the exception. So we need to handle that exception. So let me wrap this code under try catch. And let me print this. Here again, in this cloning, right? For the mutable properties, this clone method is just performing the shallow copy. So what we can do is, on this cloned student for marks, right? We need to put all properties, and here we will be passing deep copy marks. So in this way, on this cloned student, so roll number and name are copied, but for marks we need to pass a new copy. So that's why we used our method deep copy marks. So the same marks which returns fresh copy of marks hash map, and we are passing that, right? And finally we are returning clone student. So here what we can do, we can just throw new runtime exception, which is clone failed or something like that. Okay, yeah, that's it. Let me quickly revise the steps. So final class we need to declare. The property should be final and private. And in constructor, for immutable properties we can assign the values directly, but for mutable properties, for example hash map is a mutable property, so we need to perform deep cloning or deep copy, not just shallow copy. Shallow copy is just the copy of reference to another reference, but deep copy makes sure like we are assigning completely a fresh object to this property, right? And for deep copy, so we have just created this method here. In this method we are creating fresh hashmap object, and we are passing the values from the past reference into the newly created hashmap, and we are returning this newly created hashmap, and further we are using wherever we need to assign this, right? We need to have only getter methods. We will not be creating the setter methods for immutable class. And during the getter methods, so if our property is mutable, in our case marks, so we need to make sure we are returning a separate copy, not the original one, right? And if our class is clonable, right, so we need to make sure while cloning the object of our immutable class, for all our mutable properties, again we need to set the newly created object, not the original one. That's why we are just passing the new object in this clone method. Let me create main class here, and inside main method let me create one hash map string integer marks equals to new hash map, and here let me put marks dot put, and let me create one object, so student object, so which is immutable, and here student equals to new student, roll number 1, name Parwinder, and marks, right? And let me print this. And just to print, let me do one thing here. In our student class, I'm just overriding toString method so that I can see the values in formatted way. So I am just printing the student, which will be ultimately calling the toString method. Run. So name, roll number, marks, right? Now if I create another object, student 2 student, right? And here if I print student 1 equals to student 2, now we have just copied the reference of student into another student. And let me run this. So it returned true because both the references student and student 2 are pointing to the same object. That's why this equality operator returns true, because both the references points to the same object, or we can say both references contains same address of student, right? But now if I do one thing dot, so here we are cloning, right? And in our student class we have written the clone method, right, in some different way. So you can see it returns false, because when we are cloning, so now this student 2 is pointing to newly created student object. Okay, another thing we can do here is, for example, I am creating another hash map string integer marks2, and here we are calling student dot get marks. So we just want to see if the marks object is being changed or not in our original object, so which is student object. So we are fetching the marks map, and in marks2, so I'm just adding another entity, for example marks2 dot put we can say history 93, right? So you can see what I did. I fetched the marks and I added new entry, right? But if I print the student object one more time, let me see if the marks property being updated or not. So student after changes in marks, and here let me print student, our original reference. If I run this, so you can see after changes in marks, but our student object is still the same as it was originally, right? So it means, so our class is completely immutable. So either cloning or trying to change the properties, so we are not getting any change. So our class is completely immutable. So finally, to summarize, immutability is powerful concept that makes our code safe from accidental changes, especially in multi-threaded environment. By using deep cloning for mutable fields like HashMap, we can ensure that our objects truly remain immutable. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and make sure to subscribe my YouTube channel for more programming tutorials. And as always, feel free to drop any questions in the comment below. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.